Welcome back in. We're almost on to week 8, which is the week of hell by Mageddon, as many call it. But we are trying to get you ready for week 8 buys with our waiver ads for this week. And I'll be honest, there's not a ton to get super excited about, but we're going to need some players. We're going to need especially for flexes and stuff like that, streaming options for quarterbacks, tight ends. So we're going to get into it. So let's go ahead and get right started. We're going to get right into it. We're going to start with the quarterback position, and we're going to start with my top streaming option of the week is going to be Michael Penix versus the Dolphins. Penix is currently playing right now, but he gets one of the best matchups for week 8. The Falcons will return home to take on a Dolphins defense that has yielded the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. The only concern I have here would be the Falcons just running the ball down the throat of the Dolphins, limiting Penix's ceiling. But either way, I think this spot sets up really nicely, and Penix has played much better at home than he has on the road so far. So let's keep moving. We're going to move over to Jackson Dart. Dart had himself a day today against one of the best defenses in the league. Completed 15 of 33 for 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 INT. He also rushed 5 times for 11 yards and another score for 29.4 PPR points. Dart has now scored 19 or more fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. Dart and the Giants will travel to Philly for the second time in 3 weeks. So this last matchup, he scored 24 fantasy points. So I think Jackson Dart is also a very viable streaming option. Now, let's go to some of the little more gross territory, but they're going to be needed. Joe Flacco is the first one I want to talk about against a matchup here against the Jets. Flacco had a monster day on Thursday Night Football against the Steelers. He completed 31 of 47 passes for 342 yards and 3 scores for 26 fantasy points. Since joining the Bengals, he is averaging 280.5 passing yards, 2.5 passing touchdowns, and 22.4 fantasy points per game. While I don't know how much longer this will actually hold up, I will say his upcoming schedule is very, very good for the Bengals. Like, if you could buy low on like a Chase Brown or a T. Higgins, like it's the time to do so because their schedule gets very, very good over the remaining half of the season. So I do think this week Joe Flacco is in a very good spot, especially at home against the Jets, and the Jets have allowed the 12th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Now, lastly, a couple others I want to talk about really quickly. Spencer Rattler, I think, is a little bit kind of a gross play, but it feels a little bit desperate. But it is a good matchup. I just want to bring him up because the Bucs have allowed the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. But I will say Rattlers only has 2 games all season where he scored more than 15 fantasy points. So that could be a problem. I also say JJ McCarthy. Looks like he has a shot of returning this week. He was listed as the emergency quarterback this week, but they do play on Thursday night. But J.J. McCarthy could be an option, as well as Aaron Rodgers, who also had a really good game this past week against the Bengals. But the matchup isn't as good. They're playing the Packers Sunday Night Football. It is in Pittsburgh, so that is a plus, but just not as good of a matchup. But I do think Aaron Rodgers, at least somewhere we could look. Let's keep moving here, and let's move over to the running back position. And not a lot to talk about, but I will say Kyle Monangai rostered only 7% of leagues. Monangai rushed 13 times for 81 yards and a score. He also hauled in two of his 3 targets for 13 yards for 17.5 PPR points. This is a very encouraging game for Monangai, who was involved early, receiving red zone touches in the first half. The Bears have got more run heavy recently. Williams hasn't surpassed 30 pass attempts in either game, despite being a very good matchups. I would expect that to change this week against the Ravens, though, with Lamar Jackson expected to return. But Monangai should still see probably 8 to 10 touches, making him a viable flex option against a defense that has the second most PPR points to running back. So let's keep moving here. Let's move over to Tyler Algier. I feel like I have him on this video every single week, but here we are again. Algier has had double-digit touches in 4 of his last 6 games. He's also scored double-digit fantasy points in 3 of his last 6 games as well. With arguably the league's worst run defense on tap and 6 teams on bye, Algier is actually a really strong flex play this week against the Dolphins and should be rostered way more than 38% of leagues, considering that if anything were to happen to Bijan, he would provide league-winning upside. So next up is going to be Tajay Spears. Spears didn't do a whole lot today. He rushed 5 times for 22 yards and was targeted 4 times. He turned those into 3 targets, or he turned those targets into 3 catches for 18 yards. With so many teams on bye, Spears is a low-end RB3 in PPR formats against the Colts. And then Bam Knight, I want to mention him on here. The Cardinals do go on bye this upcoming week, but he's still only rostered in 22% of leagues. Bam Knight received 17 total touches today against the Packers. However, He only turned that into just 64 yards for 8 PPR points. However, once they come off their week 8 bye, they will travel to Dallas to take on a Cowboys defense that has the fourth most PPR points. So I do think Knight is a worthwhile stash for week 9. Lastly, I just want to hit on Rashad Smith really quickly. I know he's somebody else a lot of people are going to be talking about, but only rostered in 6% of leagues. Now, say on the surface, you're going to see Smith handle 19 touches today, and he turned that into 79 total yards. However, 10 of his 14 carries came in the fourth quarter when the Chiefs pulled all their starters. However, all 5 of his receptions came in the first 3 quarters. So I will say that is very encouraging, at least especially in PPR formats. There was obviously a clear plan to get him more involved in the passing game today. And he's now also seen 17 targets over his last 4 games. He's a worthy spot on your bench, but I think he's more of like an RB5 than a flex option this week against the Commanders. Let's move over to the wide receiver position because I don't think there's a whole lot else to talk about. I will say Bashaw Tootin is also probably a very viable stash. I know they're on bye this week as well, but I do want to mention him because, I mean, Travis Etienne has not got it done. Travis Etienne has not looked good really since week 1. And I wonder with them going on bye, will they look to shift things a little bit and try to give Bashaw Tootin a little more touches? So he's also somebody that I really would make a priority to stash if he's sitting out there or if he's been dropped. So let's keep moving here. Let's move over to wide receivers. And I really want to focus more on players that really could be usable for this week. I think it's more of a focus for me because 6 teams are on bye. I mean, when you have teams like the Rams, the Cardinals, the Lions, Jaguars, Raiders, and Seahawks all on bye, there's a good chunk of players that we're going to have to try to fill in for. So first I want to talk about is Darnell Mooney. If you're looking for a wide receiver / flex this week, then Darnell Mooney might be your best bet. He returned this week. He hauled in 3 of 5 targets for 68 yards, but he actually ended up leading the team in receiving yards tonight. But the Falcons only managed to score 10 points and 290 total yards. Mooney looked healthy for the first time all season, which was encouraging. He's going to play almost every snap against a phenomenal matchup against the Dolphins. It really is slim pickings this week. So Mooney is one of the best options available at wide receiver this week that I would easily plug in at flex option for me this week. Next up is going to be Alec Pierce, only rostered 9% of leagues. While all attention has been on Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Warren, and Michael Pittman, rightfully so, but Alec Pierce has been completely ignored despite averaging nearly 10 PPR points per game. This week, Pierce was targeted 10 times. He turned that into 5 catches for 98 yards against the Chargers. Pierce makes for a really solid streaming option against the Titans next week. Next up is going to be Xavier Legette, only rostered in 6% of leagues. Now, I really don't know how sticky this is going to be, but it's hard to ignore when a player sees 11 targets. Legette led the team in targets, receptions, and receiving yards, and he did score the lone touchdown as well. Now, he did lead the team. So he did score the lone touchdown, and the Panthers vomit-inducing 13-6 win over the Jets. To start the year, Legette looked like probably the worst wide receiver in the league, honestly. However, the last few weeks, he started to show some signs of life. He scored 11 PPR points in week 5, and then he scored 24 PPR points this week against the Jets. He's going to be hard to trust, but considering many of us are searching for high and low for options to play this week, Legette is actually a useful red zone option as well, and has carved out a bigger role today. So I do think the Panthers welcoming the Bills off their week 7 bye, I think that they're definitely going to have to throw the ball a lot more than they've had in recent weeks. And whether it's Bryce Young, whether it's Andy Dalton, I think you can at least look at Xavier Legette as another flex option for me. And then next up is going to be Kayshon Boutte. Now, Boutte is touchdown or bust at this point. Now, I will say he caught both of his targets for 55 yards and a touchdown for 13 PPR points. He's only been targeted three times, 3 or more times once since week 1, meaning he will need to score a touchdown to pay off because he's not going to see any sort of volume. But this is a pass funnel defense this week against the Browns. So I don't mind Kayshon Boutte as another option. Now, some deeper plays that we can look at here that are probably a little bit more widely available in 12-team leagues. But first I want to talk about is the Broncos wide receivers. Both Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims are in play against the Cowboys this week. Troy Franklin tied with Cortland Sutton for the most targets with 10. However, he only caught 3 of them for 19 yards and a score. Then you had Marvin Mims, who is the more consistent option, catching 6 of his 7 targets for 85 yards. Both Broncos wide receivers are boom or bust, but this is a very juicy matchup against the Cowboys on tap. So I do think both of these guys are streaming options for this week that we can plug into our lineups. I will say I think I slightly prefer Troy Franklin just because he's a little bit more involved in the red zone. But both of them, I think, are very solid plays this week. And then lastly, it's going to be Shamir DK, only rostered 1% of leagues. This feels a little bit more of a one-off performance than anything, but he did play 55% of the snaps, which was a season high for him. He caught all 4 of his targets for 70 yards and a touchdown for 17 PPR points. He he has seen 4 or more targets 4 times since week 2, but this is the only game he's actually done anything with them. DK was a 4th-round pick in the 2025 draft. He's 6'1", 196 pounds. He is a pretty good athlete with 4.34 speed, 86 percentile burst. But I do think he's kind of worthy maybe for a speculative ad, but I don't have a lot of excitement for this offense at all. Like really anybody on this offense at this point. Maybe if you want to stash like a Tajay Spears or something. I still have hope Elike Manor it could eventually turn into something, but this offense just hasn't been good all year. And so it really makes it tough to really trust anybody, within this offense. So lastly, I did throw Christian Watson on here. It sounds like he could be coming back soon, but this team just spreads the ball around so much. It makes it tough to ever trust any Packers wide receiver. Outside, really, it makes it tough to trust anybody outside of Josh Jacobs at this point. And then I put Brandon Ayuk on here. There's been some more talk that maybe he's getting better or he's getting close to returning to practice. GM John Lynch said he's progressing every single week. Kyle Shanahan said he hopes he's back by week 10. But I think he's at least worth a stash if you could hold it or if you could make it work and you're one of your IR spots. If you can't, totally understand that. Let's move over to the tight end position, which I actually think, for once again, is probably the best option because first, Arondé Gadsden, only roster in 3% of leagues. We've been tracking Gadsden and his rise in usage for the last few weeks, but today it all came together. He exploded for 7 receptions on 9 targets for 164 receiving yards and a touchdown for 29 PPR points. He's now been targeted 17 times the last 2 weeks and gets a very, very favorable matchup this week against the Vikings on Thursday Night Football. Gadsden is certainly the top waiver ad of the week at tight end. And he started to look more and more, not just a streaming option, but somebody you might be able to just plug in and keep playing for the foreseeable future. And I will say, this is still a pretty crowded wide receiver room or receiver room when you still have Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen. But, as we've seen recently, this team's had to come from behind. And so if they continue to have to do this, especially with the way they're the lack of the running game, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. So I do think it at least opens the door for more targets for someone like Gadsden, who is a rookie, but looks really good, incredible today. So let's keep moving here. Mason Taylor is the other guy I want to talk about. Still only rostered in 39% of leagues. Well, it certainly wasn't a great day for Taylor, who caught 3 for 31. It was an ugly day overall for the Jets offense. We eventually had the Jets turn to Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. I think it would actually help. It would be an upgrade for the pass catchers if they just turn to Tyrod Taylor moving forward, or at least for the next couple of weeks. We kind of saw with Jacoby Brissett, right? The last couple of weeks, like how good the pass catchers look in this offense with Kyler Murray out of the way. And so I kind of want to see what it looks like with Tyrod Taylor, just a quarterback right now. But I will say, I do think this is a very, very good matchup this week for Mason Taylor, as the Bengals have allowed the most PPR points to tight ends. And we just saw the Steelers, all of their tight ends just absolutely smash against them last week. So Mason Taylor, I think, is in a good spot. And then lastly, Noah Fant. Fant was highlighted by video of must plays of the week, and he paid off with 4 targets for 44 yards and a touchdown for 14 PPR points. Fant gets another great matchup this week against the Jets, who have allowed the 6th most PPR points at tight end, making him a top 15 tight end for me this week. And I also threw Isaiah Likely, who's coming off bye. He's on here. I think I want to see, and I do think with him, this injury and everything else, I think there's a scenario where we see him play more snaps and get more involved in this offense. It's also a big time, plus that obviously Lamar Jackson's going to be back for this game, or is expected to be back after their bye. I also think Rashad Bateman is kind of an interesting. I didn't put him on the list just because he hasn't really done anything, but just somebody that I can see myself at least as a flex option sitting out there if you wanted to add him. And then Theo Johnson, I also have him on here as far as streaming options. I think that, I know him and Daniel Bellinger both had really good games, but he's going to continue to be somebody that Jackson Dart looks for because it's really just him, I guess Daniel Bellinger, because Darius Slayton is out, and Wan'Dale Robinson. So they're definitely going to continue to be looking for their tight end. So Theo Johnson, I think, is also in play against the Eagles. So anyways, that being said, I think I don't really see any questions in here. Ashton, TFA, appreciate that. Penix might not start next week. We'll have to see what's going on there. I know they're at the end of the game, but we'll have to monitor that. But if Michael Penix plays, then I'm going to be about that. I probably could make an argument for some of these other quarterbacks because mainly because what worries me the most with next week with the Falcons pass catchers, everybody not named Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, is that they just run the ball right down their throat. Like we have seen now, the Dolphins just get absolutely ran through by running backs. Like it is a premium elite level spot to have any running back play against the Dolphins right now. And so I can see Bijan Robinson having 200 plus yards next week against the Dolphins. Like, and that's not like hyperbole or being hot. Like that's how bad things are right now for the Dolphins. I mean, we saw, this week, obviously Quinshon Judkins go off, Rico Dowdles went off against this team. Like almost every running back, Kamani Vidal, went off against this defense. So like, I want to play running backs against this defense, but I mean, Bijan Robinson could smash. And so that would be my only like concern, I guess I would say, with playing someone like Michael Penix next week. Fields a safe drop from EC. Yeah, I think you could drop him. I mean, if there's other options sitting out there, sure. I don't think you need to hold on to him. And I think it's very possible that that he could end up just losing that they could end up just turning to Tyrod Taylor, because as bad as things have looked, it wouldn't shock me if Aaron Glenn only got 1 year and he was gone after the season. Kendre Miller, a safe drop. He did suffer a knee injury, left the game. I'll have to see what that looks like. If he were to miss, I think Devin Neal would be like a kind of an interesting stash. But I wanted to get more information before I really said anything about that. But rookie running back this year hasn't really got much run, has a little bit of playing time, but he could end up being the guy that kind of steps into that Kendre Miller role if Kendre Miller was forced in his time. So, but yes, I think you could drop Kendre Miller if you need to, especially with so many teams on bye. Emeka or Nico? I would probably just go Nico. I absolutely adore the spot that the Bucks are in. I mean, that game looks phenomenal. But it also, any player that's coming off an injury where we didn't really know if he was going to play, if I had a better option, which for most people aren't going to have a better option, but if you can play Nico, I probably just go with Nico. Honestly, it makes me a little bit nervous because I love Emeka Egbuka, obviously, and this is the spot, but I probably would just slide to go with Nico against the Seahawks. So that being said, I think that's really all we got. I mean, like I said, this isn't a crazy week in terms of like players to add. I will say my must start video that I do when I go through the must start quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. I'm probably going to try to dig a lot deeper this week and try to find some more one-off plays that are widely available in people's leagues that we can look for, because with 6 teams on bye, I mean, there's a lot of players that we're going to be looking for. And I actually think also a very sneaky way to play this week is going to be kind of a little bit like DFS type play, but where we play tight ends on our flex spots this week. I know it seems a little bit gross, but tight ends are a little bit easier to find. And, I think someone like a Noah Fant, for example, Rondé Gatson, who's widely available. Even if you have like an elite tight end and someone you're going to play, I think honestly, just playing a tight end in your flex this week might be the path in terms of, instead of going with some of these wide receivers or running backs that might be sitting out there. QB Dak, Chase, Ladd, JMO, Hunter, Ridley, Coker, running backs, Saquon, ETN, Stevenson, Kamara, Marks, Vidal. I also have Bowers, but it's 2 flex, no tight end. So Bowers can only be flex. I'm going to be 5-2, but I'm pretty sure I need to make changes. Otherwise, I'm going to be cooked. I mean, running back is really where you're really hurting. Obviously, Saquon's not having anywhere close to the year that I think people were hoping that he would. I mean, so like that's the tough part. But everything else, I mean, especially Jamar Chase right now, people that held on to Jamar Chase are feeling really good about themselves this last 2 weeks with Joe Flacco, and Dak Prescott's been phenomenal. Ladd's a little bit hit or miss, but like you could try to probably see what you can get for Saquon Barkley at this point. I mean, he's still a name; he still holds value. So like but I'm not giving him away. I want to preface it that. Oh well, good for you on that. I traded Pickens for Chase. Good for you on that. Like phenomenal work on that. I still really like George Pickens, especially in the offense, but he's not going to outperform Jamar Chase. And I mean, we're seeing Joe Flacco just absolutely pepper that man with targets. So, but I was saying is like Saquon could be a spot we could look to move and try to get maybe a little bit more depth at the position. But everything else a little bit, maybe also like a Ramondre coming off like a decent game today. Uh, he's also maybe somebody you could look to sell high on to try to buy. Like I've said, I want to buy Chase Brown. I'm not trading Saquon for Chase Brown. Let's make that perfectly clear. But like taking somebody like Ramondre Stevenson, for example, and like Kamani Vidal, who I mean Vidal's not going to hold this job all year, and trying to go trade for somebody like a Chase Brown and another piece because if you look at Chase Brown's like rest of season schedule, again for the Bengals and their playoff schedule, it's phenomenal. Now you have Jamar Chase, so maybe I don't like that as much because of that. But I think it's also but that's what I would be looking to do because like you need running backs. Like that's what's really killing you right now because I mean Saquon just not producing at the level he was. ETN outside of that first couple of weeks has kind of fallen off. Stevenson's been pretty good. Kamara is hard to trust. I think eventually Woody Marks is going to have a larger workload in the offense. It looks like that was going to happen, and then they went back to Chubb. But I think that's kind of where I stand with it. Like I think that's what I would try to do. I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to sell him now. I mean, he's coming off that injury. He's on bye week, but I still think that he was looking better. And I mean, the Jaguars as a whole looked terrible today against the Rams, and so like it was pretty embarrassing for the most part to watch that game. The Jaguars, especially their offense, just didn't really do a whole lot. But I'm still a hold on BTJ because I just don't think you're going to get what you probably should for him. So hopefully this bye week can kind of clear things up. Is how they're going to keep performing. You think? So I mean, it was super encouraging, right? They almost exclusively played him on offense, and he did play some on defense. But I thought that it was really encouraging to see how much they utilized him on offense this week. And so, I mean, I think they need it, right? I mean, they need somebody to take the pressure off of Brian Thomas Jr. and like teams are just able to double Brian Thomas Jr. And then you have like Parker Washington and De'Ami Brown, like Britton Strange has been out, so that hurts them. Like I think they need this. I think they need him more on offense right now than they need him on defense. So I think it's encouraging to see what he did. But yeah. Good video. Good evening. Sorry, Tony. As Henderson viable week 8 bye week losing running back unless hit waivers. I mean, you have to do what you got to do, right? But like, I would say no. Like, and it's almost crazy to think that to say that he's droppable because like he kind of almost is. Like, I wouldn't want to at this point just because I would rather hold. But like, if you're desperate with all these bye weeks and you have to drop somebody, like maybe you have to do what you have to. And people keep saying like recently, like, oh, why does anybody drop him? Why don't the Patriots play him? Why aren't the Patriots playing? Because he's been awful. He hasn't been good. Like that's been the biggest problem. Like I get it. He's not getting a ton of work right now. But like with the work that he's been given, he's done nothing with. I think it'd be different if he was like being super efficient and explosive, and they weren't giving him touches. I think that would be one thing. But when he does get touches, he does nothing with them. And so like I'm starting to think that like he's probably not going to take off this year. Maybe he does. Maybe something happens to Ramondre. But they pretty much proven to you it doesn't matter what happens with Ramondre. They're going to keep riding Ramondre Stevenson. I just got offered Scattaboo and DJ Moore for Saquon. Yeah, I can't. I don't think that's enough. Honestly, I feel like you get more for Saquon than Scattaboo and DJ Moore. Like I don't. It's crazy to say that I don't hate that, but like I still would want to get more for Saquon Barkley. You know, like maybe take maybe take Saquon and try to flip him for like Bucky Irving or something like that. Especially since you're 5-2. Like, I mean, you're not in a bad spot. Like, you're in a good spot. You're in a position of power right now because you're not struggling. Like, you have a pretty good shot at making the playoffs, and you have some pretty decent options here outside of that. But like, I actually like trading for like a Bucky Irving isn't a bad spot. Do you think Ravens DST gets better post bye? They've been bad, but the schedule gets easier. The schedule definitely gets easier. Does their defense get better? I don't think it's going to get like dramatically better like it did last year because they struggled the early part. But like I think it's going to get better. Like it's not going to be as bad as it was. They're going to get some of these players back, but not everybody's coming back. Um, but like I said, like I don't think they're going to be this turnstile that we've come to expect the last month of the season because they are getting some of these dudes back. I know Hamilton came back for their bye and Marlon Humphrey, and that already made their defense look a little bit better than what it was. But I do think that it's going to be an issue for them for most of the year. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I assume you're. I mean, yeah. So you're in a pretty good spot there for that team. So um, that's what I'd be looking to do. I'd be looking to take him. Like, if you go get like a Bucky, who I know the Bucks go on bye after this after week 8, so they go on bye week 9. So like I would expect for Bucky Irvin to be back. At that point is what I would be looking to do. To add Bucky Irving from there. So, because like I would at this point I'd rather have Bucky Irving, and like I said, I expect him to be back. So, I think it's pretty fair to try to flip somebody. And whoever like in your league has Bucky Irving, I don't know what the record is, but if they're like a 2-5 team, they very well may just to get Saquon Barkley for next week for their team may end up doing it. And I prefer Bucky Irving rest of season than Saquon Barkley at this point. So see there you go. Okay, he's 2-5. I bet money you could probably send him Saquon Barkley and maybe even ask for something else on top of Bucky Irving because he's been out for so long and there's so much uncertainty with him right now. But I do 100% think he'll be back week 10. And so uh, that's what I would do because I love the ceiling right now for Bucky Irving, what he's going to look. I mean, Bucky Irving looked great before the injury, and when he comes back, he's going to go back to being the workhorse back that he was. So maybe try to do that. Is Kyle Monangai worth a number one waiver claim? I would say no. He's still only going to handle like 8 to 10 touches a game. Like he's not worth a number one waiver ad. I will say that. So uh, I think he's worth like 5, probably 10%, like fab budget. But I wouldn't want to use like the number one waiver order, number one waiver claim for Kyle Monangai. It'd be different if DeAndre Swift went down with an injury today. It's not what happened. But I think he's worth a stash. Bucky and Kyron's probably a little tough. I mean, if you could make it work, I would do it. Like I have no problem doing that. That completely changes um, what your running back room looks like. So if you could flip it, maybe you have to add a little other piece into it to make it work. Like I don't hate that at all. Uh, like I said, I mean, take like Saquon and throw in another piece. I mean, come on, even all for example, throw him in. Whatever. So I think that I like that. I would offer that. Frustrating with Jalen Coker today. Didn't do a whole lot. Uh, obviously, I think he saw 2 targets, did nothing with them, but they also didn't have to do anything in this game. I mean, they pretty much controlled the game. The Panthers' defense was phenomenal. One of the best defenses on the week. But but yeah, it doesn't shock me that he was on a snap count because coming back from this injury that he's missed all this time for. There's going to be much more. Like I said, I think even just this week against the Bills, where they're going to have to throw the ball at a much higher rate this week, especially the Bills coming off bye week. So, like I think that he's at least still worth a stash to see how things play out. And like I said, whether it's Bryce Young who plays or Andy Dalton, I think they're both good enough to be able to get him the ball. I think he's at least worth a stash for another week or two, just kind of see how this thing plays out. I'll just wait. We don't use Fab. Yeah, I would save your number one waiver priority. I would be real upset if I use my number one waiver priority on Kyle Monangai, and then the next week there's some huge injury that's out for the year, and you could have had this winning lottery ticket, and you use it on Kyle Monangai, who's still his role's not going to change. He was, yeah. I mean, he definitely had a couple of performances last year, especially I know against like the Cowboys. He had a really solid game. Started to really kind of turn things on at the end of last year. So I think there's a lot to like with him, and somebody that I would definitely, like I said, still like the stash. I want to see how things play out with them. So, anyways, that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. Appreciate everybody being here. I'll be back again soon with the must play defenses and kickers of the week. Um, top streaming options at defense and kicker, and then we'll be back with our must plays of the week at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end all in one video. And then we'll be going live again on Tuesday night to get you guys ready to go for this Buy-Mageddon that we're going to have. So keep it locked in here. We got a ton of content coming. I appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one.